Hey guys, and welcome to a video which you have requested about 1,000,000 times and I have never properly fulfilled. It is, of course, the Meet the Horses series. Now, in the past, I have made Meet the Horses series before. I think I completed it once, like way back in like 2018 or 2019, but things have changed a lot since then. We have a lot of different horses and I need to fill you guys in. I actually started making a Meet the Horses series last year and I failed miserably after like 2 episodes and everyone was just being like, where's the rest of the horses? So today I have finally decided to complete the challenge and do a full Meet the Horses video. Now, I went on Instagram and I asked you guys how you kind of wanted me to format this because there is so much information about every single horse here on the yard. Some more than others, some have loads of history, others don't have as much. So I asked you guys whether you wanted me to kind of delve into everything or whether you wanted me to keep it relatively brief. I have decided to try and keep it as brief as possible, although I am the queen of rambling. So I'm going to try my best not to ramble and to kind of film it all in one bit so that it makes future Kate's job of editing this slightly easier. Although if you are planning to do some kind of drinking game with this, please count the amount of times I say or anything like that to fill in the spaces. Because I guarantee it will get you drunk. Moving swiftly on. So I'm going to attempt to introduce 4 horses to you guys today, and I will see later on whether I manage to include all 4 when I'm editing it, because I don't want this video to be like insanely long, because I just find when things are like ridiculously long, it's just unwatchable. So I'm going to try and do as many as I can in that space of time, and we're going to introduce you to Nero, Tilly, Carly and Bob today, mainly because they all live together in one field now. So I thought it would be fairly easy. I could just walk around and talk about each one and then edit it all together later. So it's easier for me, basically. So in no particular order, let's go find our first horse. So this is Nero. So we call him Neen as his nickname, but we have had Nero for, it'll be 11 years this September. So we got him in 2014. He is a Welsh D cross Frisian and he is about 14-1. He's 14-1 to his withers anyway. I don't know whether you guys can see, but he has always had a very dippy back. People do question it sometimes, but I feel like it's very typical of the breed. With the Welsh Ds, you get a lot of Welshies that have a little bit more of a dippy back. I'd say it's gotten like ever so slightly worse, perhaps as he's older, because he's now 25, so it probably has gotten slightly worse over the years, but he always has had a very dippy back. If you don't know who Nero is, then I don't know where you've been. Like, you may be new and haven't followed me for very long, because Nero has basically been the golden boy of my life. I have had Nero obviously since 2014, and I bought Nero as I bought Nero. I definitely didn't buy Nero. I was 14 years old. I had no money. My parents bought Nero to compete in the JA classes on ponies, because I did a lot of high-level show jumping when I was a kid. So I started off with a pony called Bob that we're going to meet later, and then I got Nero to jump the biggest of tracks, because Bob wasn't keen on jumping past a certain level. Like, he was very confident up to sort of like 110, but he didn't really want to go past that. So that was when we got Neen. Neen's just, he's not even, Neen, dude, Neen, could you like look this way? There he is! Oh, he's so grumpy today. Oh my god. So that was when we got Nero. So a little bit about Nero's past. I'm not going to delve too much into his past, otherwise this video is going to be like 5 hours long. Nero was originally a gypsy cob at the side of the road. That was where he was born. That was the beginning of his life. And then a girl called Zoe Ackroyd bought him and she started to produce him, and she got him into BS and jumping. And so there's some really early videos of him and little country shows and fields and stuff where he's jumping like really tidgy little fences, and it's so sweet to see where he started off and like how incredible he's become over the years. And then he went to a girl called Sophie Ball, which was actually when I first heard of Nero. So I was 11 when I first heard of Nero, and my friend went on YouTube and typed in the Dark Emperor, and she was like, you've got to check out this pony. And we sat in my living room and we watched hours and hours and hours of Nero jumping with Sophie. And she had a YouTube channel called sball1995, and that was where I first met Nero, essentially, and where I first fell in love with him and became obsessed. And by obsessed, I mean obsessed. So I began following Sophie. Sophie was the one who first introduced Nero to like YouTube and things, and he was one of the OG YouTube ponies. Like, everyone knew who Nero was. Like, his show name is the Dark Emperor, so it was always such a striking name, and his personality combined with how he actually went in the ring just made him so unique and so special. No one had ever seen anything like him. And I have to say, in all of the years since Nero's retired and since I've known Nero, I haven't seen another pony that quite hits the same as Nero, that's vibes quite match. And I haven't seen another pony on the circuit since that I can honestly say, like, I would desperately want this pony. I think maybe Maddie Mayer's Jerry is the closest that I've ever been to, like, that's the pony I would want if I was on the circuit now. Like, he's definitely who I would want if I was on the circuit now. But there was no one like Nero. Like, there was literally no one compared. When I first started watching Nero when I was 11, I was at school and I was going through a lot of bullying, so I would literally spend my lunch times and my break times sat in the girls' changing rooms on my own with my little snack that my mum made me, and I'd just watch videos of Nero. That was all I ever did. I would just sit there and watch the videos and just feel inspired and feel really lifted up by him, which is really ironic because, like, as I'll explain later, Nero is literally, he's like my best friend. He's very grumpy today, aren't you? Very grumpy, but he is my absolute best friend in the world, and it's mad that he was still making me feel incredible and lifting me up when I was most down before I even properly knew him, which I think is really special, because I do think some things are meant to be, and that just makes me feel more and more like me and Nero are destined to be together. So then he went to Nat McQuiggan, and Nat did amazing things with Nero. She produced him from doing sort of like 110 levels successfully and the odd like 115, 120, all the way up to what we call pony show jumpers. So if you're not on ponies and you're not aware of the things that happen with ponies in British show jumping, the highest level that you can jump on ponies is pony show jumper or JA classes. So they have JA winter class, they have winter JAs and they have the summer JAs, which are the pony show jumpers, and they are 135 in the first round. Now bear in mind, these ponies are only like 14 hands, 14.2, so these are huge fences for these ponies. Wait, what you doing? What you doing? They're huge fences, and Nero just made it look so easy. And I always really felt for Nat, I have to say, because Nat tried so hard to get him to Horse of the Year show, and she was so close on so many occasions. And I feel like it just takes ponies sometimes a little bit of time to step up and then actually start producing the results at that level. So I think unfortunately Nat's year was like just the step up to that level before he could produce the results. And that brings me on to when I actually first met Nero. So I met Nero in 2013, which was Nat's last year on ponies, and I had Bob at Bishop Burton, and it was a big pony premiere show, and I'd taken an unclipped shaggy Bob in very hot weather, and he did not perform. He didn't want to know, guys. This was before I really knew much about horses, to be honest. Like, it's incredible how much I learned in such a short space of time, because I took him literally like shaggy as hell. Like, there was so much fur on him, and yeah, it was like the middle of summer, and he was just like he could not get over any of the fences. He was done before he even got in the ring. But that was where I first met Nero. Nero was there with Nat jumping the pony show jumper classes, and me and my friend Becky, we went to the show hoping that we'd see Nero, and we did. And all of a sudden I'm standing by the ring and I'm thinking, where is he? He's got to be here somewhere. Like, this is the warm-up class or something for the pony show jumper. And I just glance across, and they have this big like walkway at Bishop Burton with like trees shading it, so in the summer you stand the ponies under it, and all these ponies, these gorgeous beautiful ponies, they all look lovely. And then I look across and I see the most shiny, beautiful creature I have ever seen in my entire life. Just literally his coat was like shimmering like gold dust under the sun. Like it sounds like I'm writing a book here, but like that was what it felt. It was literally like all these ponies all pretty lined up and then Nero in the middle just like So immediately I thought, oh my god, it's the Dark Emperor, and I was absolutely head over heels. And after a good hour or so of us going back and forth about it, me and my friend Becky decided to go and say hi. And that was also when I first met Nat. So Nat had actually seen me and she already followed me online with Bob, because at this point I already had I think I had about 10,000 followers with Bob on Instagram, which back then was like, it was still a lot now, but it was crazy back then. Like there weren't many equestrians who had like an enormous following on Instagram. So we were one of the ones that had like a fairly decent following at the time. So a fair few people knew who Bob was. He wasn't like super famous, but like he was well enough known. So Nat knew who he was as well, and she knew who I was. And I went across and me and Becky were just utterly idolised by Nat and Neen. We spoke to them for like a good few minutes, and then Nat actually said, I need to go get him a bucket of water. Will you guys hold him for me? I need to go to the lorry park. And the lorry park's like a good few minutes away. And we were like, oh my God, yes. So we're just there like, and literally we were stood there taking photos somewhere. I don't think I'll be able to find them for this video because my old computer is actually up in the loft in the house, but somewhere there are photos of me and Becky on just holding Nero, just like utterly obsessed with him. That was when we first met him, and Nat and her mum came back and her mum was like, oh my God, you can't just leave your pony with these random people. They didn't sign up for this. Oh, he's leaving. He's leaving. Oh, it's because Tilly's here. Tilly, it's not your segment yet, darling. It's not your segment. Anyway, moving on. We get Neen's butt in it now. Yeah, Nat's mum was like, you cannot leave him with people. They didn't sign up for this. And we were like, it's cool. Honestly, it's fine. But that was where I first met Nero. And then, of course, Nat came off ponies at the end of that year. She was 16. And when in the UK, when you're 16, you're at the end of that year, you're no longer allowed to be on ponies. So the year you turn 16, you move off ponies at the end of that year, which is really sad. That's just to compete affiliated as a junior on a pony. So you can still compete ponies, but just not like officially, if that makes sense. So Nat came off ponies at the end of that year and Nero came up for sale. And my parents had always said, because I'd been so badly bullied and things, and it was my absolute dream. It was literally the only thing I had in my whole life was the horses and the love that I had for show jumping and the ponies and stuff. They had decided that for my last year on ponies, we would look into getting a JA pony so that I could go out there and complete my dream, tick off the bucket list and go and compete in some of the biggest classes in the UK, which to this day is one of the greatest things my parents could have ever done for me. So anyway, Nero was for sale for quite some time. He's leaving now, but we'll keep talking about him. He was for sale for quite some time, and I think it's just because Nat and her family were very picky about who they wanted him to go to. So I think a lot of people had gone to try Nero, but they were in no rush to sell him. They wanted him to go to the perfect home, which I'll always really admire about them. It's something we've always had in common with them. Like the genuine love for Nero and for all the horses is something my family and Nat's family have always had in common. So they still had Nero coming into the summer season and stuff. So they put another junior rider on Nero just to compete him, to keep him going whilst he was for sale and hadn't been sold yet. So another junior rider started riding Nero and they did various different classes, and this junior rider actually lived in Yorkshire, which is where I live. So Nat was based further down south, so I never really saw Nero at local shows, only if there was a huge show up here and he travelled up like Bishop Burton. Bishop Burton's one of our local shows, but we never really saw him otherwise. And then all of a sudden he'd moved to Yorkshire, so he was here all the time. So I actually have videos of me competing against Nero on Bob. So there are videos of Nero, Bob, like in the ring at the same time, literally going past one another, and it's like two ships passing. Honestly, it's mad, because my dream, obviously when I ended up getting Nero, was always to compete Bob and Nero together, and for various reasons that I'll go into later, we didn't get to do that. I saw Nero constantly. Everywhere I went, it was me and Bob and Nero and his rider. And then towards the end of the summer, Nero was doing all the qualifiers again for Horse of the Year show for the pony show jumpers with this junior rider, and again he was getting somewhat close at a lot of the shows, and then the last one of the season he had a bit of an accident and had a bit of a crash in a treble, and then we didn't really see Nero for a while after that. He went back to Natalie and her family, and that was when me and my parents had been looking at various different JAs because Nero was out of our budget. Bearing in mind our budget, according to my dad, was the least it could possibly be. I don't think any of us really realised how much a JA pony was. I think until this point it had literally just been like a oh yeah, we'll get a JA pony one day, like I'll be fine, and then all of a sudden it was time to get a JA pony and we were like, oh my god, the price. So we were kind of looking at JA ponies that, without being rude, had kind of passed their prime because they were either really ancient or had like come back from an injury, and that was kind of like our price range. And then we started calling up about other ones because a lot of them were like price on application. So we rang up about a couple, and the second one we rang up about was the same price as Nero was advertised for. And my dad made the crucial mistake of saying, I'm not buying this pony because for that we could buy the Dark Emperor. And that was it. The ship had sailed and we were going to try Nero. So one day in August, I made the trip down to Coventry to ride Nero. Excuse me? Are we having a mental breakdown? Oh, hey, Kaka. It's not your segment either. It's not. Are you... Okay. So we made the trip to ride Nero, and the videos of me trying Nero always make me laugh for various reasons, but mainly because I was practically nude. So I wanted to ride Nero in something red. Oh, hey Neen, have you come back? It's your segment, baby. It's your segment. He doesn't care. So I wanted to ride Nero in something red because that was the colour Sophie had competed him in, and that was my show jacket colour that I competed in on Bob. So I wanted to see how cool I looked in red on Nero. Thing is, I couldn't try him in a show jacket because that's weird, and I only had one red t-shirt, which didn't really fit me. And the shoulder straps kept coming down, and it was so low cut. Like, I think the only reason I didn't show some cleavage is because I had the body of a 12-year-old boy. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, I look back at the footage and I'm like, oh my God, you're practically getting naked on this pony. But anyway, I went to try Nero, and I was so nervous because if you haven't seen Nero before, he does a lot of booking, and I was a bit worried I wouldn't be able to sit his books. I'd been watching him book online for years, but the reality all of a sudden set in as I was getting on, and I was like, oh my God, what if I can't sit this? Like, what if I come off and they're never gonna let me buy him if I fall off? Like, it's the end of the story. The end of the fairy tale. I tried him, I absolutely loved him. I remember he booked so much with me at the end, and I sat it pretty good, really. Like, I was very unfazed. In fact, I was like smiling and laughing. And I remember Nat's mum, Kerry, coming across and just being like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, are you fine? Like, how are you feeling about it? And I was just beaming. She'd come across to see if I was okay with all the booking, because obviously it's not something that like loads of ponies do, especially not like Nero does. Nero has always loved his booking, and I get so many questions all the time online, like, is he in pain? Does he have this? Does he have that? He has been scanned, he has been x-rayed, he's been checked for everything. It is just excitement, and trust me, if that pony wanted to get you off, he absolutely could. He's mortified. If anyone falls off him, it's the worst thing. Like, he absolutely hates it. So trust me, if he wanted to get you off, he could. A lot of the time, he'll do a couple of books, and if he like unseats you at all, he'll just stop and let you get reseated and then be like, ready? Off we go, and start booking again. He really is a little dream, but I just thought I'd state that just so that people aren't like, oh my God, he's all that booking. We decided we were gonna buy Nero, and Nat and her family were happy with us buying Nero, especially since I'd stalked Nat all the previous summer, but that's a story for another day. And anyway, in that September, a video went on of me trying Nero. My first ride on the Dark Emperor went live, and that was the start of our story together. But I'll always remember the drive home with Nero because I posted that video. I'd literally edited it between when we went to try him and when we actually bought him was a good few weeks, if I remember right, or at least it felt like that. It was probably like a week, but it felt like it had been like a month. I was so excited to get him. I do think it was a couple of weeks at least, maybe even 3. Yeah, I was very, very excited. So I'd literally, the day I tried him, I'd gone home and edited the video ready. So it was all like unlisted on YouTube, ready to go. We got Nero. We were in the car with the trailer on the back because we didn't have a lorry yet. And we were on our way home. And I remember just posting the video. And this was my first proper experience with how mad social media is. Obviously because Nero was very popular. As soon as I posted this video, I remember just getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of friend requests on Facebook, because Facebook was like more or less the main platform back then. Instagram was still actually fairly new, so it was like YouTube and Facebook, and my subscriber count and my Facebook friends just went like off the scale. I was just in the car on the way back like, oh my god, like scrolling through Facebook like, what is happening? This is mental. And it was because Nat had put a post on as well saying that he'd come to us, so everyone wanted to follow Nero's journey, so on they came to me. Anyway, for the rest of that year, I got used to Nero, we got settled in together, started to bond with one another. We went out to various different shows, and I think I did a meter and a 110 at our first show together, and then we did a 120 at our second show together. I'll always remember the feeling of him jumping treble clear in that, because like 120 to Bob had been like a big ask, and like it was the height that like he could do it, but he wasn't very confident at that. 110 was like Bob's comfort zone, so 120 was Nero's comfort zone through and throughout. But to me that was such a new feeling to get on a pony that thought like nothing of a 120. So we jumped treble clear around that 120, and it was insane. Like it was so big in the final round, and I was literally just like, oh my god, because 120s back then were like triple rounds, so you had to jump a treble clear. So you had one full first course, and then you had 2 jump offs, like a timed jump off and a not timed jump off, and it was insane. I always remember that. But anyway, we got used to one another for the rest of the year, and then in January of 2015, which was the beginning of my final year on ponies, we started finally jumping pony premiers. And up until this point, everything had gone really swimmingly, and we'd got a lot of great results together. We jumped double clear in almost everything we'd done. It just felt like I was in my like golden era of like, I've got this, I'm so prepared, going into my last year is gonna be nothing. And then we got to the first Premier show. So all the warm-up classes, everything else was great, but this first Premier show was where I was jumping my first JA class, which in the winter is a 3-round 130 start height class. They're called the Winter JA Classics. I think back then it used to be sponsored by like Fairfax. I've no idea who does it now, but that was the big class, and that was the first thing we'd done that was bigger than 120. So we went in, and it was going really quite good. Like we got all the way around, and the last element of the course was a treble, and we actually hadn't jumped a treble yet. So we come round the corner to this treble, and I'm riding at it like normal, thinking nothing of it, and Nero stopped. And I was like, what? None of us had really thought anything of it. Not me, not Nat, not his junior rider that he'd had the previous year. But actually the last time he'd had a treble, if we remember to what I said like about freaking 5 hours ago, he'd had an accident in the treble that was down in Wales, and he hadn't seen a treble since. So none of us figured it would be an issue. Nero had never batted an eyelid at anything in his life. But all of a sudden, every time we came to jump a treble, he just couldn't hack it. And that started the trend of our winter classic experience. So we all of a sudden obviously had to go into a lot of training and stuff, trying to work on combinations, trebles at home. And I was really losing my bottle with it, because I mean, it is a little bit scary riding into a 130 treble that's all like huge and boxy and up here when you're on a pony that you think will probably stop. Especially coming from a rider like me, who at this point had like no experience whatsoever at this level. So it wasn't like I was a seasoned pro and I was like, cool, no, don't worry about it, I'll just jump on this pony and sort it out. Like, I was so scared that this was going to be it, because I couldn't summon the confidence from somewhere, and I started to lose confidence, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And I was training all the time, trying to sort it out. I had a trainer at the time who was trying to help me as well, and it was just we were fighting what seemed like a losing battle, and that was the trend for the entire winter season. So I've managed to find a couple of the videos. I think it's all from the same venue, because unfortunately I can't access a lot of the footage I had. One day I will, and I'll put them all into a compilation for you all so you can see. But usually it was either really near the end or the last thing in most of the classes, and that was the combination, and he stopped every single time. So it didn't matter how much I fought for it, and I'd be pushing and pushing and pushing, and nothing. Eventually it got to the last qualifier of the season, and I was feeling pretty bummed out, and we'd done a lot of work at home on the trebles, and it was gradually starting to improve, but we still had yet to get past the treble in a winter JA. So, and they didn't really put them in any of the other classes back then, because they were kind of warm-up classes. Like, you see them a lot more now, I feel, but back then it was all just doubles until you got into like the big qualifiers, and that was where you'd see a treble. It was the same with like open waters. There was no practice open water in a warm-up class. It was just like nothing, and then all of a sudden, okay, you're in the big qualifier, here's this giant 3-meter open water. But anyway, we went to Arena UK, and how it was formatted was there was a JA qualifying class on each day. So it was the same winter JA class each day of a 2-day premier show. So it was the first day at Arena UK, and I walked the course, and it was his best combination. So I remember thinking, if I can't jump it here, we're never going to do it, because this is the nicest one for him. So what Nero tended to do is jump in with a lot of power and then lose power the further he got through a combination. So the combination at Arena UK was ox it in, so big effort in, and then upright out, upright out. So it was oxa, upright, upright, which for Nero was the best because he could jump in with all that power, and then he could still get over the 2 uprights with less power as he was coming out, if that makes sense. So he didn't need as much effort to get out, whereas if it was like a big square boxy oxa to get out, he'd need to still have a lot of energy and a lot of oomph behind him when he got to the end. So I remember going in, and it was right near the end as well. There were literally, I think there was 2 fences after the combination to go, and you'll see in the video, I'll overlay it over this, but he was jumping great, and I actually thought he'd had a fence. So he knocked the second fence, and it just rattled and stayed in the cups. But I remember hearing that as a rider, and it was the one time I didn't actually look back, because I used to have a terrible habit of being like, oh my God, did I knock it down? And then the rest of the round would go to pot. I heard that fence, what I thought, go. I didn't hear it hit the ground, but I heard him like smack it with his foot, and I was like, well, that's that then. And I think that helped me, because I think I just relaxed a little bit, because I thought it was over at this point. I thought I'd had a pole, it was done, I was never going to qualify, it was fine. And then we get all the way around to the combination. He's jumping really well at this point, and you can just hear all of my friends and family in the background just being like, come on, like literally whispering, cheering us on. And he did it. He got through the combination, and then there's this like eerie sort of like time where there's 2 fences to go, and obviously everyone who's watching knows that I'm actually clear at this point. I thought I'd had a pole, but we're actually clear. So they're like, oh my God, is she actually gonna go clear? Not only has she made it through the treble, but like, is she actually gonna get to the end? Like, and he flew over the last, and I was like, yay, we finally made it to the finish. And I just hear them go, that's clear around for Kate Lewis and the Dark Emperor. And I was like, what? And all of a sudden I'm frantically looking around for the second fence, being like, oh my God, it's still up. Like, I can't believe we've actually jumped clear in a winter JA. Not only have we made it past the combination, but we are clear. And then we were literally celebrating for a good like 25 minutes in the warm-up area, and then all of a sudden I realized there was another 2 rounds to go, and I didn't know any of my courses. So then it was like a frantic panic of me being like, okay, what's the second course? So the second round in these like 3-round classes is usually a continuation of something from the first round. So it could be fences 1 to 6 or like 7 to 12 or something. Like, it's usually, you know, like 6 or 7 jumps in a row, like replicating part of what was in the first round. So for me, this was like it was like midway through the first round. I think it was slightly altered. So it was like 1 to 3, and then the last 3 fences, which was the combination again, and then the last 2. I'm there like, well, great, I have to do this bloody combination again. And what they sometimes do is in the second round, they'll take a fence out of a combination, so making it into a double. And I was like, I'm sure that's what they'll do, guys. I'm sure that's what they'll do. And my friend's mum, I remember just going round and then coming back a few minutes later and being like, no, Kate, they've left the entire treble in. You have to jump it again. And so they're still happy for me in the second round, as you can hear.
Yes!
You could just hear my dad being like, oh my God, 1 to go. And it was just me and a girl called Charlie Dawson in the last round on a pony called Misty. So it was just us 2, and now I was not a seasoned pro by any means. So, and Charlie Dawson, she'll probably laugh if she ever watches this, but to me, Charlie Dawson and several other riders were like the absolute elite epitome of British show jumping riders. I was so like honoured to be around them. Like if I was walking the course around them, I'd be like, I was so chuffed, like, to just try and like blend in and be one of them. But they were like the elite crew. They were like the A squad, and I was just this little follower at the side, just like, hey. But it was just me and Charlie in the jump off, and I'm there thinking like, oh my God, I've come second. I've come second in this winter JA. Like, no matter what I do, I have come second now. I have done it. I've achieved life. So I wasn't really bothered about what happened in the jump off. I just decided I was going to go for it anyway, because what have I got to lose? It's fine. Anyway, Charlie went in and had a pole down, and I wasn't watching, so I had no idea, which resulted in one of the funniest jump offs that my friends will constantly tease me about, where I'm going like as well, I'm not actually going like ridiculously fast, but I felt like I was going really fast, and I'm doing all these super tight turns and stuff, to the extent where everyone watching is like going like trying to like cheer me on and get through it, because they knew that I didn't have to go against the clock. All I had to do was jump clear and I won, because Charlie had a fence, but I hadn't watched. So I'm thinking I need to go like the clappers to try and beat Charlie, which I would have never been able to do anyway, because Misty was so fast. The whole audience was behind me, and I love that video so much because I'm just this little girl with a dream. Like, that's all I am, and I'm just this little girl with a dream going around on my little black pony, who's also my dream come true. And the whole audience were behind me, and it was really like this little fairy tale, and and he jumped clear. And he won. And then I just remember going to the finish timers, still thinking that I'd come second. I just remember thinking, yes, I've jumped a treble clear, like this is the best day of my life. And then as I slowed Nero down to a trot, I'm like patting him to come out and stuff, and the commentator just goes, so the winner of the Winter JA Classic, Kate Lewis and the Dark Emperor. And I was like, what? And you just see me like throw my arms around Nero, and I was literally like in bits. And I went out, and you can see my friends approaching, like walking to the gate to greet me at the gate, and it was just the best day ever, and it just felt like I'd completed life.